Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Especially after their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2000, Earth, Wind and Fire solidified themselves as one of the greatest genre-crossing music groups of all time. And it would be impossible to honor the band without noting the tremendous efforts of its chief singer and songwriter MAURICE, who not only created the group but also led it to massive success in the 1970s per Britannica. Yet despite Wive's amazing accomplishments, his rather authoritarian style of leadership also brought on a good deal of heartache and turmoil for a considerable number of the band's many members. Eventually, the situation became so bad that the frontman even put an end to the band for some time in the mid-1980s. Those volatile conditions, along with a few other shocking tragic events, mean that every member endured much hardship on their rough road to fame. The worst of these moments are shared below, and given what the bandmates had to overcome only makes their journey more impressive. Here are some of the tragic details about Earth, Wind and Fire. After moving to Chicago, Maurice White continued to land music gigs and most notably became a member of the Ramsey Lewis Trio in 1967, but the venture was short-lived because the talented musician wanted a project of his own as described in My Life with Earth, Wind and Fire. So he formed the Salty Peppers in 1969 and moved to Los Angeles not long after. Both in Chicago and at their new location, the group continued to struggle to gain a large following, which led White to rebrand them into their now iconic name Earth, Wind and Fire. As EWF, the band did better but still failed to produce anything hugely popular. After their self-titled debut in 1970 and the next album, The Need of Love, released the following year, the frontman then decided it was necessary to start from scratch and completely replace every member of the group except of his brother, bassist Wardine White, according to AllMusic. At this point, singer Philip Bailey was one of the new major players brought on board, and by 1974, the revised lineup finally made EWF's first major hit, Open Our Eyes. In 1976, the band members of Earth, Wind and Fire experienced a terrified moment when arranger and producer Charles Stepney suffered a heart attack while they were recording their album Spirit. Even though Stepney survived after he was taken to the hospital, it was just the beginning of the tragedy, as Philip Bailey recalled in his memoir Shining Star. After cutting basic tracks at Hollywood Sound, we got the phone call. Charles was found dead in his home in Chicago by the family member. We were floored by the news. His death would affect us both personally and professionally, altering our course tremendously. Maurice White also described how unexpected Stepney passing was because he seemed to be recovering as he rested back home in Chicago. In his book My Life with Earth, Wind and Fire, the frontman added, "No matter how death comes, sudden or not, it's always a shock, and Step's death was so abrupt." After the massive failure of the album Electric Universe in 1983, Earth, Wind and Fire reached one of its lowest points when Maurice White put the band on an indefinite hiatus. The news was not only heartbreaking for his bandmates, but the worst part was that all of them were caught completely off guard by the decision and had no other means to make a living lined up in preparation for the breakup, according to Philip Bailey's Shining Star. Bailey described the disastrous aftermath for the rest of the band. The breakup was a nightmare. Some members lost their homes and fortunes, and some went into counseling after suffering nervous breakdowns. Even Maurice's brothers were not immune from the ex. Maurice and Wardine were not speaking to each other during this terrible time, and Freddie had moved on. Percussionist Rolf Johnson was a member deeply affected by the shocking news and admitted how difficult it was for him when he told CBS News, "Yeah, cause this is all we had. So when somebody kind of pulls that rug out, you are like, now you have gotta rethink your whole program." Johnson was then forced to work in very different jobs for a time, first in construction, followed by a position at Federated Stereo as a salesman. Earth, Wind and Fire getting back together in the later half of the 80s was a happy occasion for the bandmates, but by the turn of the decade, it became increasingly clear that not all was well with the original founder of the talented group, Maurice White. When talking with CBS News, Philip Bailey described what it was like for him to gradually discover that White was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, saying it was a few years that, we walked it down together. It took a lot of courage for him to finally get to the point of really even saying, "This is what it is," cause we were all hoping, that it perhaps might be something else, something that you might be able to be treated with this, that, or the other. By 1994, White's condition deteriorated to the point that he was unable to tour with the band, which was the first time that EWF performed without him at the helm. Then in 2016, the illness sadly took his life per AllMusic, and the legendary songwriter passed away in his Los Angeles home. Thanks for watching. Like, share and subscribe.